We've been told since we were children that success is something to chase, that if we work hard, stay disciplined, and out-hustle everyone else, eventually we'll catch it. We were taught to see success as a destination, a finish line at the end of a long and grueling race. So we start running, we run toward promotions, toward titles, toward status. We chase numbers in our bank account, followers on a screen, degrees on a wall, trophies in a cabinet. And then one day we look up and realize something terrifying. We've been running so fast that we never stop to ask why. Here's the truth: no one tells us success is not a goal. It was never meant to be the thing we pursue. Success is a response. It is what the world gives back to us when we live and lead with purpose. It follows those who stop running after it and instead choose to stand for something bigger than themselves. Think about the people who truly inspire us. The ones we quote, follow, and celebrate. They didn't wake up one day and say, "How can I be successful?" Instead, they asked, "What does the world need? And how can I show up for it?" They weren't driven by applause, they were driven by impact. And because of that, success became a byproduct, not a pursuit. There's a fundamental difference between people who chase success and people who attract it. One is chasing something that constantly moves further away. The other is building a foundation so strong, so rooted in values, that success has no choice but to come find them. One lives in fear of falling short. The other lives in alignment with who they are, what they believe, and what they're willing to fight for. We live in a world that rewards outcomes, but greatness starts with intention. When your decisions are driven by purpose, not pressure, by service, not self-interest, something powerful begins to happen. People begin to trust you. They follow you not because they have to, but because they believe in what you stand for. And when trust is built, influence is born. Influence, real influence, is what makes success inevitable, not accidental. The irony is, the more you try to become successful, the more you distort your true self in order to fit into someone else's definition of what success looks like. You lose authenticity. And without authenticity, you lose connection. And without connection, no one follows you, at least not for long. But when you focus on who you're becoming, not what you're achieving, you build something that no market, no trend, no algorithm can take away from you, a reputation rooted in character. You don't need to have 1 million followers to lead a meaningful life. You don't need a corner office or a viral post or a best-selling product. Those things might happen, but they are not the cause of success. They're the effect of something much deeper. When you live by principles, when you're obsessed with adding value, not just extracting it, when you stay consistent in a world addicted to shortcuts, that is when success starts following you. Quietly at first, then loudly. People want to know what the shortcut is. The hack, the trick. But there is no shortcut to being respected. There is no trick to building trust. There is only integrity lived out over time. And time has a way of filtering out the noise. You'll notice that the ones who burn bright for a moment often burn out just as fast. But the ones who understand that success is a response, not a reward, they build something that lasts. The real question we need to ask ourselves isn't, how can I succeed? It's, what kind of person do I want to become? Because the quality of your character will determine the trajectory of your results. Success will find the one who is becoming worthy of it, not just demanding it. People don't follow titles, they follow trust. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's not just a cliche, it's a universal truth. And when you operate from a place of service, when you make your work about something bigger than your ego, you become magnetic, not in a flashy way, but in a grounded, real, contagious way. This is why success can't be something you chase, it must be something you invite. And the invitation is sent not through words, but through action. It's written in how you treat people when no one's watching. It's in how you handle failure. It's in the values you refuse to compromise, even when they cost you something. Those are the things that make success come knocking. You don't have to fight for recognition when your work speaks for itself. You don't have to beg for opportunities when people trust your reputation. When you stop chasing success and start becoming someone worth following, the right people, the right moments, and the right doors start showing up, not by luck, but by design. So the first rule is simple, but it's also everything: stop chasing success and start building the kind of life that attracts it. Anchor yourself in purpose, lead with values, measure your growth not by what you earn, but by who you're becoming. Because the real reward isn't the spotlight. It's knowing that you stayed true to yourself in a world that constantly tries to sell you shortcuts. The world doesn't need more people chasing success. It needs more people living lives that matter. And when you do that, when you lead with service, with humility, and with purpose, success won't need to be chased. It will find you, and it will stay. We live in a world filled with noise, podcasts, books, gurus, influencers, each one telling you what to do, who to become, and how to win. And yet so many people still feel lost, not because they're not listening, but because they're listening to everything and standing for nothing. The truth is, the most powerful rules you'll ever live by aren't found in someone else's highlight reel. They're forged in silence. They're formed in the moments when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when the world doesn't care what you do next. The second rule that makes success follow you is this: the rules are internal, not external. We've grown up conditioned to follow the rules written by others, what to wear, how to act when to speak, what to believe. And while some structure is necessary, too much external input creates internal confusion. You start living for approval instead of alignment. You start trading your voice for validation. And here's the danger: if you don't define your own values, someone else will do it for you. They'll hand you a script and expect you to play along. But a life lived on someone else's terms will never feel successful, no matter how impressive it looks on paper. The people who live lives others admire have one thing in common: they know who they are, not because someone told them, but because they went inward before they went outward. They made a decision not about what they wanted to achieve, but about who they wanted to be. That clarity became their compass. And once you have that kind of compass, you stop being pulled in 1,000 directions. You no longer need to mimic, you begin to lead. And this is important. Leadership isn't about hierarchy or position. It's about being the person who chooses principles over popularity. It's about being the person who speaks the truth when it's inconvenient. It's about having an internal standard so strong that you hold yourself accountable whether anyone else is watching or not. Success isn't something you fake your way into. It's not about perfect branding or saying the right things in front of the right people. It's about having the courage to live your truth when no one's clapping for it. Because in time, that truth creates gravity. People are drawn to those who are rooted, not reactive. You don't have to be loud to be impactful. You just have to be clear. And clarity comes from within. There's a reason the people we admire most feel authentic. It's because they're not trying to be everything for everyone. They've made peace with the fact that not everyone will understand them, agree with them, or like them. But they're not chasing likes. They're building lives. And when you build a life rooted in your own values, you become unshakable. The challenge is we often spend more time curating the image of our life than building the integrity of it. We think success is about how it looks. But how something looks and how something feels are not the same. You can look like a winner to the world and feel like a stranger to yourself. That's not success. That's performance. And eventually, it breaks. The real rules that make success follow you are often invisible. They live in the daily disciplines you hold yourself to when no one is checking. They live in the decisions you make when compromise would be easier. They live in the moments when you feel like cutting corners but don't. Because you remember who you are and why you started. Those are the moments that define us. Not the awards, not the spotlight, not the applause. It's the quiet decisions that no one sees that shape the life everyone eventually does. So how do you find these internal rules? You reflect, you listen, not to the noise outside, but to the voice within. You ask yourself hard questions. What do I stand for? What do I refuse to tolerate? What kind of person do I want to become, not just when things are easy, but when everything feels like it's falling apart? You write those answers down. You turn them into principles. And then you make one commitment to live by them consistently. It won't be easy. In fact, there will be days when those internal rules cost you something. You might lose a deal. You might disappoint someone. You might be misunderstood, but those losses are temporary. The integrity you gain from honoring your values, that lasts. And ironically, it's what draws people to you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And in a world full of filters, being real is magnetic. There's a line that separates those who chase success and those who attract it. That line is built on internal standards. It's easy to succeed once. Anyone can show up with their best self for a moment. But the people who create lasting impact, who build legacies, not just careers, are the ones who do it again and again because they're anchored in something deeper. You don't need the world's approval to walk in your purpose. You just need your own permission. That's the great shift. When you stop seeking external validation and start living by internal conviction, your entire direction changes. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what feels right based on who I've chosen to be? That's power. Quiet, steady, lasting power. And when people see that, when they witness someone who doesn't bend to trends, who doesn't compromise for comfort, who doesn't sell out for applause, that's when they begin to follow. Not because you told them to, but because they believe in what you believe. Because your life tells the truth. And in that space, success isn't a chase anymore, it becomes a response. You don't attract success by being everything to everyone. You attract it by being something real to someone. You attract it by standing for something. You attract it by setting your own rules and having the courage to live by them. So don't just memorize quotes. Don't just copy frameworks. Don't just follow the loudest voice in the room. Go inside, define your own terms. Create your own standards, and most of all, live them. That's where the second rule lies. Not in what you say, but in what you do again and again when the world stops watching. Because that's when success starts paying attention. We've been sold a dangerous lie that talent is the ultimate advantage, that if you're gifted enough, if you're naturally smart enough, fast enough, charismatic enough, success will be inevitable. And while talent is real, it is not rare. What's rare is someone who chooses to make an impact over being impressive. Talent may open the door, but it is purpose that keeps it open. An impact, that lasting ripple you leave behind, is the result of living intentionally, not just skillfully. The truth is, some of the most talented people in the world never rise, never lead, never inspire. Not because they lack ability, but because they never understood the point of having it in the first place. They confused their gifts with entitlement. They believed being good at something was the same as doing something meaningful. But it's not. Talent without intention is noise. It shines briefly, and then it fades. But when you choose to use your gifts to serve others, to lift others, to build something bigger than yourself, that's when talent becomes impact. And that's when success starts to follow. The people who leave legacies aren't always the most talented. In fact, many of them weren't the smartest or the strongest or the best, but they were consistent. They were driven by something deeper than applause. They were obsessed with contribution, not recognition. And because of that, they became unforgettable. Not because of their resume, but because of their character. We remember people not by what they achieved, but by how they made us feel. That's the currency of real leadership. That's the force behind true success. It's not about being known, it's about being remembered for the right reasons. And that begins the moment you stop trying to impress and start trying to serve. Ask yourself this: what's the point of having influence if you're not using it to lift someone else? What's the point of being successful if no one is better because of you? What if the question wasn't, how do I succeed, but who gets better when I show up? Because when you shift the focus from self to service, your decisions change, your standards rise, and the impact you create begins to multiply. We live in a world that rewards charisma, but charisma is not the same as character. Charisma can get attention. But character earns respect, it earns trust, it earns loyalty. And those are the real metrics that make success sustainable. Anyone can build a following, but it takes depth to build something that lasts. And impact is built in depth. Here's something we don't talk about enough. It's possible to win and still lose. It's possible to hit every target and still feel empty. Because when your success is only about you, it doesn't feed your soul, it feeds your ego. And ego is hungry forever. But when you build something that matters, when you know that what you're doing is changing lives, not just headlines, that's a kind of success that fills you, not drains you. Talent can be taken away. Circumstances can change. But the ability to make an impact, the choice to serve, that's something you carry with you no matter where you go. It becomes your identity, not just your strategy. And people can feel that. They can feel when your mission is real, when your work is personal, when your presence isn't about being seen but about seeing them. That's what makes people remember you. That's what makes people follow you. That's what makes success inevitable. It's easy to measure success by numbers. Followers, profits, views. But those numbers don't tell the full story. They tell you how many people saw you, not how many people were moved by you. They tell you how far your message went, not how deeply it landed. And in the end, success that stays is not built in reach. It's built in resonance. It's built in that quiet shift inside someone who hears you, sees you, and decides to change something because of you. That's impact. That's what makes it all count. So the real question is not, what am I good at? It's, what am I giving with what I'm good at? You don't need to be the best in the world to change someone's world. You just need to show up with intention. You just need to care enough to use what you have to help someone else move forward. That's where the power is, not in being impressive, in being useful. And make no mistake, this mindset won't always be celebrated. There will be moments when your humility is mistaken for weakness, when your quiet consistency is overlooked by louder, flashier voices. But stay the course. Because while talent might get someone the spotlight, it's impact that earns the legacy. It's impact that people remember. It's impact that turns a life into a story worth telling. You don't need everyone to notice you. You just need to make a difference where it matters. And the beauty of that approach is it scales. You don't need permission to lead with impact. You don't need a title. You don't need a massive platform. You just need the courage to ask, how can I help? And the integrity to answer that question with your actions. Not once, but every day. The most admired people in history weren't just talented. They were consistent, clear, and committed to something beyond themselves. They understood that success was not something you earned just by being good. It was something you attracted by doing good. And in doing so, they didn't just rise, they lifted others with them. So let your mission be your magnet. Let your purpose be your power, and let your focus be your fuel. Because the moment you choose to trade talent for impact, ego for empathy, applause for service, that's the moment success starts chasing you. Not because you tried to impress, but because you decided to matter. Impact is greater than talent. And in the end, it's the only thing that survives us. There's a myth we've been told for years that the secret to success is intensity. That if you can just work harder, grind longer, push past the pain, you'll get ahead. That if you burn bright enough for long enough, you'll light the path to victory. But what no one talks about is what happens after the burn. What happens when the adrenaline fades, the energy drops, and your body and mind beg for rest? You see, success doesn't belong to the most intense, it belongs to the most consistent. Intensity is seductive. It makes you feel powerful. It gives you something to prove. But intensity is a sprint. And success is a marathon disguised as a series of daily sprints. The people who win long-term aren't the ones who go all in and flame out. They're the ones who show up even when they don't feel like it, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. Because consistency is quiet. It doesn't get headlines. It doesn't go viral. It's not loud or flashy. But it's what builds trust. It's what builds discipline. It's what builds results, not once, not in a burst, but over time, day after day, decision after decision. The most successful people in the world aren't always the most talented. They're the ones who made a decision to keep showing up when others stopped. They understood that success doesn't reward the dramatic. It rewards the reliable. And reliability is built through routine, through repetition, through refusing to let your feelings dictate your follow-through. Anyone can get excited once. Anyone can have a good day. But what happens on the days when motivation is nowhere to be found? What happens when no one claps, no one notices, no one cares? That's the test. And most people fail it, not because they're weak, but because they've built their identity around intensity instead of discipline. There is something sacred about doing the work when no one is watching. There's something powerful about keeping a promise to yourself when it would be easier to break it. That's where confidence is born. Not in hype, but in integrity. Not in the big moments, but in the hundreds of small ones that no one will ever see. We live in a culture obsessed with going big. But the truth is, big things are built in small moments. A best-selling book starts with one page. A breakthrough business starts with one idea. A world-class athlete starts with one workout. Consistency compounds. Every small action you take either builds you or breaks you. And most of us are not being undone by one bad decision. We're being undone by the 1,000 small compromises we keep making. Success is the result of aligned habits. It's not something you stumble into. It's something you build one brick at a time, one behavior at a time. And the bricks you lay are determined by your daily choices. What you do today is what creates your tomorrow. And if you want to change your future, you don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to start showing up better than you did yesterday. That's it. The difference between average and great isn't always talent or intelligence. It's follow-through. It's the ability to keep moving forward when it's easier to coast. It's the decision to do what's necessary, not what's convenient. It's understanding that mastery is found in repetition, not reinvention. So many people are chasing the next big thing, the next trend, the next platform, the next shortcut. But here's what's true: the most extraordinary results come from the most ordinary habits. The only difference is they're done with intention. And that intention is repeated again and again until it becomes identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And consistency is the system that separates those who succeed once from those who succeed again and again. Because when consistency is who you are, you don't need to rely on motivation. You don't need to hype yourself up. You just do the work because it's what you do. It becomes part of your DNA. And when that happens, success starts to notice. Not all at once, but slowly, gradually, like water carving stone. People begin to trust you, not because you're perfect, but because you're present. They know what to expect from you. And in a world where most people are unpredictable and reactionary, consistency becomes a rare and valuable currency. Think about the leaders you admire most. It's not just what they achieved, it's how they showed up again and again, through wins and losses, through storms and sunshine. That's what earns respect. Not one great performance, but a lifetime of steady commitment to what matters. Success doesn't follow passion alone. Passion burns out. Passion fades. What success follows is persistence. Passion is how you start. Consistency is how you finish. And anyone can be passionate in the beginning, but very few are committed to staying consistent in the middle, the long, dull, frustrating, exhausting middle where most people quit. Consistency is boring, but it's also magical. Because every time you show up when it would have been easier to check out, you're telling yourself, I'm someone who can be trusted. That self-trust becomes your advantage. It's the quiet confidence that says, I've done the work. I'm ready. Let's go. And when you have that kind of trust in yourself, the world starts to trust you too. Opportunities come your way. People begin to believe in your reliability. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you proved it the hard way, the honest way. So if you want success to follow you, stop asking how fast you can get there. Start asking how long you're willing to keep going. Stop chasing the next shiny thing. Start mastering the basics. Over and over again, the people who are admired the most are not the ones who sprinted the fastest. They're the ones who walked forward every day without quitting. Because in the end, the difference between the person you are and the person you want to be is not motivation, it's not luck, it's not even talent, it's consistency, quiet, steady, relentless consistency. That's the rule. And when you live by it, when you build your life on the kind of discipline that doesn't need to be seen to be real, success stops running from you. It starts following you. Every meaningful pursuit requires one thing above all else: courage. Not the kind we celebrate in movies, not the grand, heroic gestures that come with a soundtrack and a standing ovation. I'm talking about the quieter kind, the daily kind, the kind of courage it takes to tell the truth when it's uncomfortable, to stay when it's easier to quit, to hold the line when no one would blame you for letting go. Success follows the courageous, not because they are fearless, but because they are willing to move forward despite the fear. Most people wait for courage to show up before they act. But courage doesn't precede the action. It follows it. You don't feel brave and then take the leap. You take the leap and then realize you were brave all along. The world tells us to wait until we're ready, but you're never fully ready, not for the hard conversations, not for the risk, not for the failure that might come. And yet, the ones who rise, who build something worth remembering, aren't the ones who waited. They're the ones who acted before the feeling came. Courage is not a one-time decision. It's a habit, a daily posture. It's choosing to live by your principles even when the room disagrees. It's saying no when yes would be easier. It's being vulnerable enough to admit, I don't know, and strong enough to say, but I'll figure it out. Courage isn't about being loud. In fact, it rarely is. Courage is the still, small voice that whispers, keep going, when every part of you wants to stop. And it matters, because every one of the rules that make success follow you will eventually demand courage. It takes courage to be consistent when no one notices. It takes courage to live by internal standards when the world rewards conformity. It takes courage to prioritize impact over ego, contribution over control. Without courage, the rules remain theory. They stay on the shelf. It is only courage that turns ideas into action. We all want the reward, but few want the resistance. Because growth always brings discomfort. Success always requires risk. And the people who are willing to walk into that tension, willing to lean into the uncertainty and push through the fear, they're the ones who end up standing in rooms they never imagined. Not because they were the best, but because they were brave. Most people live in a loop of hesitation. They think, they doubt, they delay. They tell themselves, one day, but one day becomes never when courage is not a habit. You cannot build a meaningful life from the comfort zone. Nothing extraordinary is built in safety. Growth lives in the stretch zone, the space between where you are and where you're afraid to go. And the only way to get there is by choosing courage again and again. Even when your voice shakes, it's tempting to think courage is something others are born with. But courage is a decision. It's built in the micro moments, the seemingly small acts of choosing integrity over convenience, of speaking up for someone who can't, of standing alone when everyone else sits down. Those decisions don't always feel big in the moment, but over time they create character. And character is what success follows. You cannot shortcut this. You can't outsource courage. You have to face the resistance yourself. You have to do the hard thing when it would be easier to hide. And the truth is, no one will celebrate you for it at first. You won't get applause for taking the high road. You won't trend for walking away from what doesn't align. But that's the point. Courage isn't about optics. It's about ownership. When you make courage your default, everything else changes. You ask better questions. You stop seeking approval and start seeking truth. You stop avoiding failure and start learning from it. You begin to live in alignment, not because it's easier, but because it's right, and from that alignment comes peace. Not the kind that's passive, but the kind that's rooted. The kind that says, I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to show up fully, even if it costs me, because it will cost you. That's what people don't talk about. Courage isn't free. It will cost you comfort. It might cost you popularity. Sometimes it will cost you relationships, opportunities, or reputation. But what you gain in return is priceless self-respect, clarity, purpose, and ultimately trust from others, and more importantly, from yourself. When people sense your courage, they begin to trust you. Not because you always have the answers, but because you're willing to ask the hard questions. Because you're willing to tell the truth when it's uncomfortable. Because you lead from values, not from fear. In a world that is constantly bending, people are desperate for someone who will stand. Courage is what makes you that person. And once people trust you, they begin to follow you. Not because they have to, but because they want to. That's the real magnetism of leadership, not charisma, not authority, but courage. People are drawn to those who step into hard things with open eyes and steady hands. Because deep down, they want to believe it's possible to live that way too. And when they see you doing it, it gives them permission to be braver in their own lives. You don't need to be fearless to be courageous. You just need to be willing. Willing to show up, willing to try, willing to speak, willing to fall and get up again. That willingness becomes your edge. It becomes the reason doors open, relationships deepen, and opportunities multiply. Not because you waited for permission, because you gave yourself authority. The world does not follow the loudest voice. It follows the strongest example. And strength is not built in volume. It's built in values. When you live courageously, you lead quietly but powerfully. You create safety for others to rise. And in that space, something profound happens. Success stops being about personal gain and starts being about shared growth. And that's when it starts to follow you, not because you manipulated it, but because you became worthy of it. So if you want to build a life that attracts success, build a life rooted in courage. Not just in big defining moments, but in the hundreds of small, invisible decisions that shape your character. Let your courage be seen in how you live, how you lead, how you love. And trust that when you do, when you choose to show up fully, honestly, and consistently, the success you're chasing will start chasing you, because the world is hungry for brave hearts. And when you become one, everything changes.